So today we're going to talk about breathwork practices and give a little context about some of the ones that we've each been working with. And, the interesting thing is learning them in a bit of different ways too, because, this is the same information can have slight tweaks in different cultures, in different ways, in different ancient texts, and different. So it's not
about right or wrong or one being better than the other, but there's so many variations that can be used in all different types of practices. But in this specific type of breath work that we're going to be talking about today, utilizing sound, it's pretty amazing how there's just been so many lineages and teachings and cultures that have come up with things ultimately with the same intention, but like Natalie said, just different little tweaks and variations that can be done, signifying that we're all holding the same core message here of healing the body from the inside out, using the power of the breath and sound.
So I've learned a lot of things from a frequency, a lineage breath that actually has been, we could say, even a frequency that has breathed through the earth over many cycles of time, and have seen it in this way of, the shamans in one culture, the monks in another culture, before the word Taoist even existed, before the words Druid even existed. We're talking about a frequency of a lineage that actually encoded this into the earth, encoded this into literal scalar, which means conscious light, or waveforms is what they're also called. And so this is, if you have a dream and you hear something or you see something, these are frequencies often that are speaking to you or with you. It could be ancestral, it could be a lot of things, but what I've been shown is thinking about breath as a waveform. And that's an interesting way to get into the context, a little background of this, because the same sound can activate different fields depending upon the person's coherence in their own field, in their own breath, that person's emotional state at that given moment, and then the phase of the cycle. So inhaling, exhaling, or in a pause, because we actually go through these cycles every single day in our life. So there's a lot of things that kind of contribute to breath, we could say. And then when we use sound with breath
and consciousness, we're bringing our conscious awareness and attention to the breath. So we're actually pulling ourselves out of the autonomic nervous system at this point. The breath and blinking being the only things that are part of our autonomic nervous system we do 1,000 times a day that we can actually control. But when it comes to the breath, it has just profound effects on the body and on the soul and the spirit.
Yeah, and there are 6 healing sounds, and Mark actually just did a blog post on the Forge and Flow website, forgeandflow.org. What is it called?
The 6 healing sounds.
Qigong.
In Qigong, the 6 healing sounds. And it's fair to say that there's way more than 6 healing sounds, but those 6 are specifically designed in Qigong practices. They're specifically designed for organs and organ optimization and efficiency and overall wellness of the organs, the pairs of organs, and the systems overall.
Yeah.
So we can think of other vibrations and frequencies that can pair with glands. Or vessels, or fascia, or bones, or anything in our field. But those particular set of 6 healing sounds are definitely tuned to the organs within us.
Yeah, and on top of that, what they're attuned to also is emotional release.
Yes.
And that emotional release is really imperative for said organs, because the way that our field works is there's an astral layer that is not seen by most. It's felt by everyone. If you feel an emotion,
vibes,
you're feeling your astral body, and that's where they kind of live. And so if there's an emotion that actually gets
Stuck.
Stuck, like really stuck. And there's this repeating pattern constantly.
And that really means like unable to move through an emotion.
Yeah. So,
right?
for
Like
example,
if you,
stuck in grief.
Yeah, grief is a classic
Big one.
example, or anger or fear. These things that become so chronic and essentially can take control over you and over your life and over your actions. That's when something becomes stuck, and these sounds and these frequencies can help move it out of the tissues and move it through the body for greater balance and flow.
So a waveform should be like a wave that crashes in and then dispels, stillness.
And if you look at a waveform, an audio waveform,
like
it has the crests, the swells, and the valleys, and it should have a nice smooth, when you really dial into it, should have a nice smooth motion to it.
Yeah.
And you can see how it does look like the waves of the ocean, right?
It does.
Swelling up and crashing down, ebbing and flowing, and that's how everything should be moving within us as well.
Yeah. And so if you think about it, if you don't clear the residue of said emotion, even joy, being stuck in joy all the time is actually bypassing truth often, like not seeing what's actually going on around you. Then we get into, okay, well, what happens? So anger all the time. Now what happens is that anger is going into a meridian in your body. Now a meridian is called many different things from my lens, but we'll just stick with that.
Energy pathway.
Energy, highway, there's other words, but that's more of the magical stuff that I talk about on another channel called Awakening Magic. But
magical.
Pain point being that if the pain point can become when it gets stuck in the liver, in the gallbladder, in the spleen, so anger, for example, you're just clogging that highway so that can't flow through.
Function.
Yeah, and so it can literally get trapped in the tissue, and so while what we have,
which could create liver issues, it could create liver disease, which people might attribute to other things. It could be as simple as an emotional trap.
Yeah, we have some complicated things today happening. We have all the things, all of the environmental stressors, aka toxins that we face, and
emotional triggers because of life.
Yeah, but so it's like, okay, there's other things to look at, but then we've got to talk about the emotional component to our health as well. Now, there are some practices that look only at emotion as creator of all things imbalanced in the body, but that's also an extremist perspective because you're not looking at the actual truth that there are toxins in the world too. So, we have to be harmonized in this approach of looking at both and all.
You need the wide angle view.
Wide angle view, biggest picture possible, because that's really important today. We don't have the world that existed 10,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 100, 200 years ago. You have to go far back, actually. 300 years ago would probably be okay. Maybe. Better, anyway. And breath practices are really vital. And these breath practices, again, have been passed down through cycles of time and across this entire planet, what we call planet. And some of the things that we'll just mention today are things that we actually teach and provide in, when Mark's teaching Qigong classes, when I'm doing private client work. These are the things that are really vital to share, because breathwork can be one of the most amazing ways to calm your nervous system.
And simple.
And so
simple. There can be complex versions of things, but it's so accessible.
Yeah.
We all breathe. Nobody can say, I don't know how to breathe. If you're alive, you know how to breathe. But bringing your conscious awareness to it can be challenging because it takes focus.
Yeah.
And there's so much distraction in this world. Even being in nature, there's distraction. Oh, look at the pretty bird. Oh, look at the grass growing. Staying focused within yourself is really the key to dialing in your intentions into whatever the practice is that you're doing. So that's, I guess, the more challenging part is the focus.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot when I'm teaching classes, that people can get very distracted easily. But ultimately, the breath work itself is fairly simple.
Yeah. And there's deep, very deep meaning behind this, because again, if you think about how the breath is a waveform versus thinking breath is just a mechanism that keeps us alive, it's
Bringing
really,
in oxygen and putting out carbon dioxide.
yeah, it's not that. It is that, and it's also not that. It's so much. It's just so much
more than that. Yeah.
And so
And it looks like the waveform, right? As you breathe,
does.
inhale, exhale, inhale,
Does.
exhale, inhale.
Yep. And in fact, whether people even really get it or not, everyone reads breath signatures. So if there's ever been someone that you've met and you are all of a sudden agitated, or there's some kind of, if you're very in tune with your body, there's a reason why. Because breath actually distributes your vibration and your signature of how your state of your nervous system actually is in that given moment. So we have to really think about our breath being extremely vital to even create coherence, not just within our own body, but in the field around us, with your loved ones, with your friends, with the general community, with your animals especially, because animals, I'm an empath as a human, they're like empaths on steroids, if you will. So imagine all the stuff they're taking in. Yeah. So, this is just another layer
Not on
to this
steroids,
to think
though.
of. No, hopefully not.
Not actually.
Not hopefully not. In my life, I've had to really calm the anger. It's because for me, I saw so many things in this world that I'm just like, absolutely not. This isn't okay. That's not okay. This certainly isn't okay. And when you see those kinds of things, when you're sensitive to the field, that's what happens.
Injustices, I guess.
So the sound shoo has been like one of my favorites.
Shoo.
That is the liver, and it's actually the whole gallbladder meridian. So when we think about the liver and we think about the gallbladder, we can also think about this entire solar plexus area, which is also related to digestion. You can think of it in the emotional digestion, not just food digestion. So this whole area here of the solar plexus is really vital to that specific meridian. And then you can also even take in the lower lung area. For example, when you see a lot of injustices in the world, that anger can actually become grief very quickly. And so the lungs can hold a lot of grief. We'll get into that one too, but that's why the shoo sound is so magical and really powerful, is because you're getting into that entire area so that you can emotional digestion is really what we have also heard be called emotional intelligence, how you digest your own
maturity,
emotions.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Another really powerful one from the Taoist Qigong world is Qi, which is related to the entire, what we call the triple burner, or a triple heater, triple warmer. There's a lot of different ways to say that. It's not a physical organ. It doesn't actually exist as a physical thing in our body, but it's really talking about all of the organs working together in harmony within one system. So from the neck down to the waist, all of the organs are here, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we got reproductive organs a little bit lower too, but pretty much from the waist to the neck is the entirety of our organs. And so we can pinpoint them individually, we can pair them and group them, but we can also look at them as the whole. So that sound she covers all the bases, really.
And yeah, exactly. And so when we working with the shoo sound, we'll do it. There's a lot of things that it can do, but things that I've written down just to keep us focused here is dissolving anger, and then dissolving that grief that can sit into those lungs and start getting into those lungs, think of your lungs being heavy with grief and what that means. And then cooling the heat. So an entire meridian carries a lot of heat, softens rigidity, that, because you get really tense when you're angry, you get really tense when you're feeling all those feels, and
Just going to create a lot of issues.
really well. And what I was also shown and taught here is that the liver and gallbladder meridians, it's also connected to flexibility and direction. So helping to direct your life, but being flexible in that said direction. So again, not so rigid. And at times, of course we've all been rigid in a lot of ways. Like I'm doing this and this is what I'm doing. And that's a very rigid way of being, which causes a whole slew of other, now you really start thinking about what else that creates, that feeling of rigidity, when our bodies need to be very fluid and soft. And
Well, that's really interesting because the liver and the gallbladder are associated with, in the 5-element theory of Chinese medicine, the wood element.
Yeah.
And the wood element's all about expansion and growth. But if you look into a forest, you'll see these trees that seem rigid. They're strong, they're big, they're solid. But you can see them kind of bending around each other. And a lot of times, if there's a tree in its way, I'm going to be flexible and I'm going to bend around it and I'm going to just find another way, similar to how water finds its way. The trees can actually bend around things, which seems almost counterintuitive because of how strong and thick and solid they are.
Yeah.
But they actually are very flexible in that manner, and that relates exactly to that same kind of liver and gallbladder meridian.
Yeah, that's awesome. The mirror version of this, like when I really tap into the earth, when I'm thinking of, and when I'm doing this breath work, feeling not only your own body, but feeling what it feels like in the earth. That's been I've been documenting this for a while now. And then when you connect it into some of the ancient teachings on the breath work, it's really interesting. So on the sound, the breath of the liver connecting into the shu, breath wind through the forest. And when you do the sound, it sounds like breath wind through the forest at the end. Like it's wind through the wood. It's wind through, so it's almost a wind, like an air and wood element kind of working together, if we will. And
like a lot of instruments, the woodwind instruments, clarinets and flutes, saxophones.
And the interesting element to this is that in like ancient Druidic teachings, it's known that that breath wind through the forest was actually utilized in the ancient groves, which we're sitting on our land, called Wensong Grove. That's not an accident. And it was about reactivating ancient song lines in the earth. You can think of song lines as breath lines. Like the earth has to breathe too, because it's a living organism, just like we're a living organism. And so song lines are breath lines in the earth. And these ancient breath keeper lineages, if you will, knew these things and worked with the earth to help calibrate her nervous system just as much as they were working with their own nervous system. So it was creating a harmonic system. Sharing this wisdom and talking about these things is so powerful, because imagine if there were more and more people all over this world doing these kinds of practices, how much things could change. I think that's pretty exciting to think about, actually.
Yep. Yeah. Well, why don't we get to it?
Yeah.
So for the breath, it's quite simple. The sounds are always going to be on the exhale. So the first thing we want to do is kind of get grounded. You can do these practices standing, seated, lying down, whatever makes you comfortable. We're seated at this moment, but I do it often standing, like in most Qigong practices, but you can do it however makes you comfortable. Get nice and relaxed, ground yourself, relax all the joints, tune in with your body, your physical presence, your breath by just deepening and bringing that conscious awareness to it, and calm the mind and come into a present moment focus. That's how we always want to start our practices, by really coming into ourselves and aligning everything and getting super focused. And it's just going to be a nice big deep inhale, best as you can do, and on the exhale you make the sound. And literally make the sound. Make the sound with your throat. Make that vibration. We have intentions, and intentions is what carries the majority of the mechanisms within us, but the sound is going to create that extra resonance that's going to just help carry things along.
You're creating that waveform.
You want to imagine whichever sound you're doing, whichever organ you're thinking about, you want to bring your deep awareness and attention to that part of your body with love and gratitude always. So you want to lead us off?
Sure, let's begin. And do the deepest breath that you can, and then say shu.
And it comes more naturally, and it'll get more long and sustained as you do more deeper breath work. Do the best you can.
Yeah. Let's do it a few times.
3 times.
3 times.
3 times.
3.
On every exhale, make the sound.
Yeah. Okay.
So breathe in deeply. And on the exhale, shoo. Let all the air run out.
Yeah. And at the end, if it sounds like the breath wind through the forest, perfect.
All right, let's do another one. Big inhale in. And release.
Shoo.
And one more. Big inhale in. Thank you, liver. Thank you, gallbladder. I love you. You may even be able
Love
to
our
feel
livers.
an actual vibration within you in that part of your body. You'll likely feel vibration up through the neck, the throat, and the lungs.
Yeah.
But you may, even as you're really bringing that intention into a specific part of your body, with time and practice, you may be able to feel that vibration in that spot you're thinking about.
Yeah, and what you may also feel the more you do it, you feel this when you shoo, you feel the air like brushing up against the sides of your body, which is really interesting. So you can feel it almost cleansing this, like giving this upward motion of cleansing into all the areas that we just talked about. And I do want to mention as well that you're feeling the organ, not as much the sound, again, like Mark said, but if the sound, which I think is interesting to think about, if the sound changes mid-breath, so let's say you go shoo and all of a sudden you go, like it you don't even, it just is not planned, it's just something that happens. You're moving into an organic or natural way of your body saying, you might need, is really amazing for the lungs. So you may be carrying grief in the lungs that you didn't even know was really present, but your body was actually showing up to tell you. So this is an interesting way to work with those sounds as well with that breath, is to think that if it changes, if the sound changes, let it. It's your field naturally kind of realigning to what is needed in that moment, which I think is interesting because there's been times when I'm focusing on one sound and all of a sudden I just change to another sound. I'm like, oh, oops. And then I'm like, wait, well, not oops. Obviously, my body is saying I really need that right now. You know, another layer too is the body was always known as the temple. So sound, if you think about a temple, like think about when there's beautiful music inside of a temple, that is really what we're creating.
It resonates.
Yeah.
And the temples are built very specifically to
Yes.
carry the resonances with the domed ceilings and all of the
Yes.
inlets and outlets that carry sound, allow it to echo
Yeah.
and bounce off and create these harmonies. They knew how to build those things back in the day.
Yeah.
Now we just build square houses. And it's crazy how we lost our way with that. But think about the insides of our bodies, all the different cavities we have.
Yeah.
And how it can actually move in
Yeah.
more organic ways. Same way a river or a stream bends around things, or the way the trees grow, and you just look at Earth and nothing is square or right angles. It's all this roundness and flowing motions. So
Yeah.
our bodies work in that capacity too, because guess
Yeah.
what? We are nature. We're not separate from it.
Yeah. So you can really think about, you're working with your inner temple walls when you do sound. And the more that you work with sound and breath, it doesn't have to be chanting, just like what we were just doing in this example today. You are literally creating vibrational movement in your inner temple walls, and you'll feel it. You'll begin to actually feel it. And the more you pay attention to it, the more it's resonating with the truth of what our bodies were always supposed to be. You know, this is hidden in all these ancient texts, and it wasn't talking about an external temple. Literally was talking about the internal
The inner
body temple.
inner sanctum.
Inner sanctum. Forge and flow. Inner sanctum. Interesting.
Interesting.
That may have been on purpose.
So you can do these things anytime throughout the year, but there are certain seasons that resonate more profoundly with these organs. And the lungs are more fall time, liver, spring, summer, heart, winter, kidneys. So there's a lot of very specific times throughout the year. You can focus deeply on these things, but it doesn't need to be. You can do it anytime throughout the year. You can do them all in one day. You can do one whenever you think of it. One if you're feeling something, if you're feeling a little congestion in your lungs, or you're feeling like you need to detox the kidneys, do the sound. It doesn't matter when or where.
Yeah.
Just bring the intention of clearing, cleansing, moving,
Getting into
purifying,
this body temple.
releasing.
These are the kinds of things that we do together and we in the Forge and Flow Inner Sanctum. And when you do these kinds of things in a group setting,
It amplifies.
it really amplifies the feeling and the effect of the intention. So, that's creating that real community like it used to be in ancient times when people used to come together to grieve.
Gather, yeah.
We weren't isolated in our little homes. We did these things with other people because we knew there's power when you really connect with others that are, if there's been a death and you're all friends and you come together and you can celebrate but also grieve together. We forget the grieving part. It's really vital.
And we have
Really
those things
vital.
in our cultures in a moment with funerals and things like that.
Yeah.
But grief can last a very long time.
It can.
And when you become isolated in that, it's a little harder to move through. So yeah, community, gathering, the solidarity really is one of the best ways to move through this stuff that can get very stuck within us.
Yeah. So we can move we can forge and we can flow. See what I did there?
No.
Oh. Did you see
Hopefully.
what I did there?
I got it. All right, thank you very much. And breathe and make sounds and make resonance and heal yourself, heal the world.
Yeah. Create that temple.